I respect Isaiah Thomas's talent. To me, the best point guard of all time is Magic Johnson, and right behind him is Isaiah Thomas. No matter how much I hate him, I respect his game.
Jordan is known for a lot of things: dunks, shoes, being the greatest of the greatest. Surprisingly, he's also very much known for grudges. The man built his entire career on holding a grudge against his high school coach, who left him off the team. From players who talked back, to rivals who dared to challenge him, even teammates caught the fire. If you crossed MJ, you never heard the end of it. These are the 7 players Michael Jordan hated the most. Let's start the list with the most obvious pick there is. And that's Isaiah Thomas. Jordan and Isaiah never got along. Their beef wasn't about one moment. It built up over years. And it started in the late 80s, when the Detroit Pistons were at their peak and the Bulls were still chasing them. From 1988 through 1990, the Pistons knocked Chicago out of the playoffs 3 years straight. They had a system called the Jordan Rules, and the entire thing was built to stop one guy. Isaiah was the floor general behind it. He wasn't the one doing the hard fouls, but he was calling the shots. And it worked. By the numbers, Isaiah had the edge. 65 total games, and he won 36 of them. That includes 12 wins in the playoffs, 2 more than Jordan ever got against him. There weren't many stars in that era who could say that. Then came 1991. The Bulls finally broke through. They didn't let it go 7 games. They swept Detroit. But what should have been a passing of the torch moment turned into something ugly. With time still on the clock in Game 4, Isaiah walked off the court. No handshake, no eye contact, just a quiet exit while the Bulls celebrated. Jordan saw it. He never let it go. Years later, watching the clip again during the last dance, he didn't soften up.
You can show me anything you want. There's no way you can convince me he wasn't an asshole.
Isaiah would go on to explain that walk-off. Said it was a team choice. Said he didn't think it was a big deal. But to Jordan, it absolutely was. And then there's the Dream Team. In 1992, when the greatest basketball roster ever assembled went to the Olympics, Isaiah Thomas was left off. He had the resume, he had the rings, but he didn't have Jordan's approval. It's been widely reported if MJ was playing, Isaiah wasn't going, and Jordan didn't deny it. He told Jack McCallum, "Rod Thorne called me. I said, Rod, I won't play if Isaiah Thomas is on the team." Even though Isaiah Thomas did apologize numerous times over the years, the bad blood remains. Jordan, in his hit documentary, The Last Dance, didn't miss the opportunity.
Said whatever Isaiah says now, you know it wasn't his true actions then.
Of course, Thomas was far from the only Pistons player Jordan hated. There's also Bill Laimbeer. You see, Isaiah was the brain. Laimbeer was the muscle. If you were watching the Bulls-Pistons rivalry in real time, you didn't need slow motion to spot the hits. You just needed to keep your eyes on number 40. Laimbeer played center like he was wearing body armor. He boxed out with elbows. He set screens with forearms. If someone went up for a layup, he made sure they landed hard. And when it came to Jordan, he brought a little extra every time. Years later, Jordan summed it up in one sentence.
They made it personal. They physically beat the shit out of us.
That wasn't about some one-off foul or one bad game. It was years of getting beat up every spring. And Laimbeer wasn't hiding behind anyone else. He was usually the one starting it. In one game, he leveled Jordan in midair so hard that even Pistons coach Chuck Daly had to step in. That wasn't strategy, it was a message. Laimbeer didn't care if you were the league MVP. He didn't care if it got him a technical. His job was to knock you off your rhythm, and he did it well. By 1991, the Bulls had had enough. That season, they ran Detroit off the floor. 4 games. Clean sweep. It was the moment Jordan had waited for. But when the final seconds ticked off in Game 4, the Pistons didn't stick around. No handshakes, hugs, or congratulations. All the Pistons gave the Bulls was just a silent walk back to the locker room. Laimbeer, of course, wasn't sorry. Nor would he change his mind after many decades. He would later say in an interview,
"Well, we weren't bad people, we were just basketball players winning."
He never backed off that position, and Jordan never forgave him for it. Laimbeer didn't have to lead the league in scoring to leave an impression. He hit people hard, then walked away like nothing happened. For Jordan, that left a scar that still hasn't faded. But Bill Laimbeer wasn't the only guy Jordan thought was dirty. Another player he considered dirty was Larry Bird. When asked about what NBA players think, who's the dirtiest player in the game, Jordan said this:
Laimbeer or Larry Bird.
While Laimbeer set the tone physically, the next guy on the list hit from a different angle. Larry Bird talked his way into Jordan's head and stayed there. Speaking about the greatest trash talkers he ever faced in his 15-year-long career, at a camp, Jordan was quickly to say that
Probably Larry Bird.
Larry Bird was known for his trash talking. He would often taunt his opponents, telling them about the moves before he even done them. And Bird was so good that the defenders couldn't do a thing about it. This was coming from a guy who played against Gary Payton, Reggie Miller, and half the bad boy Pistons. Bird was different. He'd tell defenders what move was coming, then go do it anyway. And it worked. Jordan respected the skill. That part was never in question. Bird could shoot, pass, rebound, control the pace, and win. But all that trash talk, that stuck with him. In the early years, Bird's Celtics owned the Bulls. They swept Chicago out of the playoffs in both 1986 and 1987. Jordan had huge scoring games. He dropped 63 in Boston Garden, but the Bulls still lost. And Bird let him hear about it every single time. Even after Bird retired, Jordan didn't really let go of it. There's a clip from The Last Dance when MJ walks into a back hallway and sees Bird standing there. Without missing a beat, he looks at him and says,
All right, take care. Thanks for working on that golf game of yours.
The delivery was smooth. Jordan smiled when he said it. But that moment wasn't just some casual locker room banter. It was the kind of thing you only say to someone who lived rent-free in your head for years. Jordan never forgot what those playoff losses felt like, and he never forgot who handed them to him. Bird didn't bruise his body, but he did in fact bruise his ego. Another sniper that earned Jordan's hate was Reggie Miller. When Michael Jordan talked about the toughest teams he faced, the first one he mentioned was always Detroit. But there was another group that gave him headaches just a little later in his career, the Indiana Pacers.
You know, Indiana was probably the toughest outside of Detroit.
They only met once in the playoffs, but it was a war. The 1998 Eastern Conference Finals went the full 7 games. Larry Bird was coaching the Pacers. Jordan was trying to complete a second three-peat. Every game was physical, intense, and filled with little moments that pushed both teams closer to the edge. Jordan remembered what those games felt like.
They were tough. Every time I go in that fucking game and come out, I got a new scratch. I'm not saying he wasn't deserving of it. All I'm saying is that fueled the fire into me. But from that point on, he's been on my list.
Reggie Miller didn't back down. He was built to annoy people. He talked, bumped, flopped, hit late shots, and ran off more screens than anyone in the league. He had one of the quickest releases in basketball, and he knew how to use it. But it wasn't just his game that got under Jordan's skin. It was everything. The attitude, the confidence, the way he moved like he belonged on Jordan's level, even if he wasn't quite there. There's one story that says a lot. During MJ's career, Reggie Miller wasn't allowed to wear Jordans, not on the court, not while MJ was still playing. He had to wait until after Jordan retired before he could rock them. That tells you how personal it got. Miller later joked about trash-talking Jordan as a rookie, saying he tried to act like he belonged. Jordan responded by dropping 44 and telling him never to speak to him again. The Pacers pushed the Bulls to their limit in 1998, but Jordan still got the last word. Chicago won Game 7 at home, then took the finals in 6. Miller never beat him when it counted, but he earned something else, Jordan's hatred. And that wasn't easy to do. The next guy on the list didn't come from the East. He didn't grow up in the Jordan Pistons drama, and he didn't talk trash for the cameras. But when it came to guarding Michael Jordan on the biggest stage of his career, the man who gave him a ton of problems was Gary Payton. In The Last Dance, when Payton claimed he wore Jordan down in the 1996 finals, Jordan couldn't help himself. He started laughing.
I had no problem with the glove.
That moment went viral. Jordan laughed like the idea itself was ridiculous. But if you go back and look at the numbers, the glove may have been on to something. Jordan averaged 27.3 points in that series, but his shooting dipped. In games 1 through 3, before Payton was assigned to him full-time, Jordan scored 28, 29, and 36. After Payton took over in Game 4, those numbers dropped. 23, 26, 22. The Bulls won the series, but the tone shifted once Seattle stopped hiding Peyton. Peyton was named Defensive Player of the Year that same season. He wasn't just physical, he was smart. He talked, pressed, used his hands, and chased Jordan baseline to baseline. He never let him rest. He later explained his strategy, said he wanted to tire Jordan out, to hit him every time he cut, bump him on every screen. And that's the thing. Jordan could say whatever he wanted on camera, but he remembered what it felt like. The Bulls were up 3-0 before Peyton was matched up with him. The Sonics stole 2 games after that. Jordan still closed it out in 6, but it didn't feel easy. Peyton never beat him in a series, but he left a mark, the kind Jordan doesn't forget. He didn't personally hate the glove, but he didn't love being bothered either, especially on that stage, with that much at stake. At the next spot, we have another guard, Clyde Drexler. Clyde Drexler was never dirty. He didn't talk much. He didn't try to get in Jordan's head, but somehow he still managed to piss him off. It wasn't completely personal, it was comparison. In the early 90s, the media kept bringing up Drexler as the guy who could challenge Jordan. Same position, same size, same skill set. Some even said Drexler had the edge athletically, and Jordan didn't exactly shut it down.
Clyde is somewhat of a mirror of me in a sense.
He agreed they were similar players, and he even respected Clyde enough to consider him a threat.
Clyde was a threat. I'm not saying he wasn't a threat.
However, when it came to head-to-head comparisons, Jordan would have none of it.
But me being compared to him, I took offense to that.
That was the thing. While it always seemed personal with Jordan, with Clyde, it was different. You see, Jordan didn't hate Drexler personally. He just hated the idea that Drexler was in the same tier as him. And once that conversation started gaining traction, Jordan decided to make a statement. The 1992 NBA Finals gave him that chance. Bulls versus Blazers. Jordan versus Drexler. Game 1 was the message. Jordan dropped 35 points in the first half, hit 6 threes, and hit that iconic shrug toward the broadcast table, like he was saying, "You asked for this." The Bulls won the series in 6. Drexler played well. He averaged almost 25 a game, but Jordan controlled the spotlight every night. The debate didn't last long after that. Jordan would later admit that Clyde was one of the best shooting guards in the league at the time, but that didn't mean he was close. This wasn't like Reggie or Peyton, where there was physical contact or on-court beef. Jordan's issue with Drexler was mental. He wanted the separation to be clear. He didn't want to share a headline, a shoe deal, or a podium. And when you look back, that's how Drexler was treated. A Hall of Famer, yes, but never Jordan's equal. The last man on the list didn't have Drexler's, Peyton's, or even Miller's resume. However, he had something that put a target on his back. Jerry Krause liked him, and that man is Dan Marley.
I knew that Jerry Krause loved Dan Marley.
That was all it took. Once Jordan heard that, Major wasn't just another defender, he was someone that needed to be embarrassed.
And just because Krause liked him was enough for me.
Krause believed Majorly was one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. And to be fair, Majorly was a solid player. He made all defensive second team multiple times, hit threes, and played his role in Phoenix's fast-paced system. But he wasn't in Jordan's world, and Jordan made sure everyone understood that. The two met in the 1993 NBA Finals, Chicago versus Phoenix, Jordan versus Barkley. Majorly drew the assignment of guarding MJ. That alone tells you what kind of expectations Krause and others had for him. Jordan went to work immediately.
You think he's a great defensive player? Okay, fine. I'm gonna show you that he's not.
Across those 6 games, Jordan averaged over 41 points. He had a 55-point night in Game 4 and made Majorly's defensive reputation look like a bad joke. It wasn't close. There was no moment where it looked like Majorly could slow him down. This wasn't about anything Majorly did wrong. He didn't talk trash. He didn't foul dirty. He just happened to be someone Jerry Krause admired. And for Jordan, that was enough. By the time the series ended, Jordan had 3 rings and another Finals MVP. Majorly had handshakes and a bruised reputation. That's the thing with Jordan. If you were in his way, he'd deal with you. But if someone gave you credit at his expense, that turned you into a problem. Jordan never forgot a face. And if you gave him a reason, he never forgave it either. Hit that like button if you've ever seen him take it personally. Subscribe for more cold-blooded rivalries, news stories every week.